And welcome to an introduction into Blender 3D's dynamic paint feature. I will only be talking about image texture mode in this video, so if you're looking for information on the vertex paint mode, you might as well stop watching and look further. Dynamic painting is a feature where objects in the 3D world can influence the texture of other objects, most obviously as seen here, by drawing or painting on a canvas. This short loop also shows off the wet paint mechanic. The texture was exported twice, once as a diffuse map, the dark line on the light canvas, and once as the wet map, which gradually disappears, and here is used as a specular model normal and an alternate diffuse map. I know it's not particularly realistic to have a pencil draw wet lines, but I wanted to show off that feature and couldn't be bothered to model, say, a paintbrush. The next application, switch scenes please, is the wave mode. Ignore the artifact on the right side of the plane, that's an error in the UV map related to subdivision. The waves will gradually disappear and you can decide whether the edges of the canvas shall be open or closed. If they are closed, the waves will bounce off them, whereas if they are open, they will roll through and eventually disappear. Then we have my least favourite mode, switch again, which is displacement. It seemed to work at first, but then getting the displacement settings right did not, so I personally cannot recommend this feature because it annoyed me. One of my favourite applications for dynamic paint is this. The fluid dynamically paints the mesh. Note that I gave the fluid and actual paint different colours so you can tell them apart easier, and both the fluid simulation and the texture resolution are quite low because calculating this takes a rather long time. Here you can also see the drying mechanic a bit better in that wet spots are noticeably darker than dry ones. Painting also has 3 effects one can choose to use or not to: spread, drip, and shrink. For this demonstration the canvases are set vertically because drip in particular is influenced by gravity. This was in fact the first time I used any of these features and I found them rather underwhelming. Drip and spread really just look like someone going ape with 2 different blur tools in Photoshop, but shrink actually does have some proper applications such as illustrating evaporating liquid, which would look different if done using the wet paint mechanic. Finally, there's a quick demonstration on how to set up a canvas and brush. I unwrapped this plane, not sure if that's actually necessary, but I did it anyway, so suck it, and then hit the 3D grid and axes because they are annoying for this. The cube is the paintbrush in this instance. It gets a short animation, nothing fancy, just to show that it works. You can use any means of making the meshes collide really, and even the particle system works for that purpose. The canvas is set to image sequence. As mentioned earlier, I won't be explaining vertex mode, so far as to say it would be horribly inefficient for this in particular. Under dynamic paint output you can see the bake button, which exports the texture in the folder chosen below. You can choose to export a paint map, a wet map, or both, the uses of which I explained earlier. Substeps calculate the position of brush meshes between frames. If you don't use that and the brush moves too quickly, you're going to get dotted lines and similar. The texture resolution for this is set to 256. You can set it as high or low as you like, but it will affect the time it takes to calculate and the required storage space, since it saves 1 image file per frame. Now that it's done baking, you have to set up the material. In cycles, this is done using the image sequence texture. Selecting auto refresh updates the texture automatically as you move between frames in the editor. It is not necessary for rendering. So, this was a quick introduction into the dynamic paint feature of Blender 3D. I hope you enjoyed the video. I've been Pixel Janos, and I'll see you next time.